I mean, the military requires accountability.
Republicans aren't interested in any lectures on accountability in the military after the Biden administration. I mean, the bar for getting rid of a Secretary of Defense is apparently pretty high.
All right, I'm warning you right now, this video is about to get very intense and it might invoke some emotions because very recently, CNN just had a very insane meltdown as far as comparing Pete Hegseth to Lloyd Austin and talking about security breaches. I think you know where this is going. Now, before we start the video, please like the video. It's the #1 way you can help this channel, and it helps others see the videos as well. It's a massive help. Let us begin.
An Inspector General review, is that enough? If it's nothing else besides the Inspector General review, is that enough?
Absolutely not. Of course, there should be hearings. You know, in every administration, there are regular hearings. Pete Hegseth should just testify. It's not that. How is that such a strange request to have him testify and answer questions about why he put up the location of our bombing in a signal chat? Basic question. Seems like he should be accountable to reporters.
Okay, I promise as we go through these clips, they get more and more intense. I would even argue one of the most intense clips we've seen from CNN in a while. Now, I need to give you some context because right now, if you are unaware, a U.S. District Judge, James Boasberg, and you might recognize him, this is the guy who ordered the flight to turn around full of the Venezuelan terror members. He has ordered all parties involved in the Trump administration's leaked signal chat to preserve the chat. Do not delete the text messages. So just keep that in mind as we go through these clips.
He is supposed to lead the military. He has people throughout the military who just openly acknowledge that if it were a regular officer who did something like this, they would be immediately terminated. And how can you lead? I mean, the military requires accountability. It's the most accountable organization. You were supposed to be accountable to higher ups. Politics isn't supposed to have to do with any of this. And the fact that that's happening, that they're just basically saying nothing to do here, is a big problem, I think, for those who believe in accountability.
All right, in the next clip, you will see Scott Jennings perform one of the biggest slam dunks I have ever seen him do on television. Now, operational security, OPSEC. This is a very sensitive topic because there is some truth to what that news anchor is saying. I was in the 101st Airborne. I was actually in the same unit as Pete Hegseth, and I have a friend who took a selfie in Afghanistan. He had 15 days of filling sandbags for breach of OPSEC. Now, the argument is this. Was there an actual breach of OPSEC, or was the wording too vague, or was the wording not detrimental enough to constitute Pete Hegseth getting fired? You know, things like that. However, overall, the Trump administration is still saying they are not seeing this as OPSEC. Maybe in the future, this judge might bring it up, or we might have a congressional hearing. But for the time being, Republicans are standing by and saying, we addressed it, we talked to Pete, we talked to Mike Waltz, this is not OPSEC, according to the Trump administration.
I think Republicans aren't interested in any lectures on accountability in the military after the Biden administration. I mean, the bar for getting rid of a Secretary of Defense is apparently pretty high. You can get 13 people killed and go AWOL and not tell the commander-in-chief, and that's not a fireable offense.
He did have to testify. Lloyd Austin had to testify.
And guess what? And every one of them testified.
But who is running the House and
By
Senate?
the way, every single one of them testified.
I mean, whoa, Scott Jennings actually went there. And I'm going to be honest with you, I almost did not make this video because of how intense this meltdown was and how sensitive this specific topic is. But because it's so relevant and, I want to educate you guys, this is essentially what's happening. Essentially, Republicans are calling out the fact that Lloyd Austin, although he did go under question and investigation through Congress, it was not even really a slap on the wrist. It was really just a very embarrassing moment for Lloyd Austin. I think we can all agree, Democrat or Republican. What Democrats are calling for on Pete Hegseth is to completely fire him, make him look terrible, fire him, fire everybody. And that's why Republicans are starting to push back and bring up the past and say, hold on, we had one of the most embarrassing moments in military history and modern U.S. history, and you want to fire Pete Hegseth for a successful mission? I'm not trying to form your guys' opinion. I'm just trying to show you these are the arguments. You can leave your comments down below how you feel about it. Now, I apologize for the prolonged dialogue, but we have to talk about this real quick. Remember, Lloyd Austin was also in the hospital for 3 days, and Joe Biden had no idea. I am not trying to form your opinion. I am not trying to create a narrative. This is just a simple fact. And what Scott Jennings is trying to point out, representing a lot of Republicans, before you go too tough on Pete Hegseth, let's remember you were not that tough on Lloyd Austin. Yeah, he got a slap on the wrist for this, but you guys did not call to get him fired.
When is he testifying? When is he testifying?
You want to do it tonight? I mean,
sure.
I'm sure he will.
I would love that.
I'm sure he will.
He'll be
and
asked
he will
questions
answer
during
questions.
his budget.
And you know, he's a Senate confirmed cabinet officer, so he will go to Congress and he will answer questions. But these lectures about accountability and national security after letting 10 million people into the country who raped and murdered and committed violent acts and no remorse or accountability.
What are you talking
no
about?
more lectures.
Close the
No
border.
more lectures about national security.
That is a different thing.
None.
First of all, if you want to
Zero.
argue that two wrongs, if you say them, make a right, that's fine.
Glad
but
you
that
say
is
it's a
not
wrong.
that's not an acceptable. If I said according to you, but that is not a
But not you.
rationale that you just excuse.
Now, I'm really curious how you guys feel about this. Please leave your comments down below. One thing we need to point out, if there's one person who pointed out the Afghanistan failures, the security breaches as far as the border, it's Donald Trump. And time again, I show you guys a lot of polls and statistics that the majority of Americans agree with Donald Trump, and the majority of Americans did not agree with Joe Biden's stances. Very unfavorable on the Afghanistan withdrawal, very unfavorable with the border situation. So again, it is rather interesting that you have Democrats really sticking their neck out for this point when Scott Jennings has the upper hand as far as the majority of Americans agreeing with him, considering Donald Trump really ran on these issues and won the election.
This kind of behavior, which is what you just did.
I don't excuse it.
You just did.
I don't excuse the behavior. Since this has happened, it's been pretty clear to me what happened here. A mistake was made on the comms, and something very, very right was done on the military side from the commander-in-chief on down operationally.
Right, and
that's
so
a fact.
why is it that it's still we don't have free traffic through the area around the Red Sea? I mean, you've made this point a lot. It's actually not that the military just...
I don't know. Why is it that this is a huge problem? Maybe we should go back in time and decide why is it a huge problem? Why are these rebels going crazy right now? Why is Trump having to step in?
Now, I don't know if you guys realize this, but Scott Jennings just checkmated her really bad. The reason is this, and this is why she won't answer. Joe Biden back in 2021 undesignated the Houthis as a terror organization. And from there, the Houthis were able to build and build and build, and we still have an issue today. And that is why, again, I think that news anchor is trying to move on from the topic. Now, I will be honest with you, the reason why Joe Biden had to do this was because we have legal issues as far as giving humanitarian aid to a group of people. The Houthis were stealing the humanitarian aid, but it got so bad around Yemen that Joe Biden had to, again, redesignate the Houthis as a terror organization. So as you can see, a lot of these issues, like we've always had issues with the Houthis, but you can point a lot of them to Joe Biden, and Scott Jennings definitely knew that, but he's not talking about it in detail. This is why I make these videos, so you guys realize this has been an issue under the Joe Biden administration for a long time.
Why are the Israelis so angry with our distribution of this information? These are really important questions.
You tell me why the Houthis are running wild over there. You work for the commander-in-chief that let it happen. You tell me.
Mistakes or not, at least the previous administration used the right device to talk about the secrets.
You worried about the devices and not the fact that the rebels harassed ships all during Biden's administration?
And they're still harassing ships afterwards. Yeah, they're still harassing ships. Get an update on what's going on.
So again, please leave your comments down below how you feel about all of this. I highly suggest you go look into the Joe Biden administration as far as the whole Houthi problem. Now, you're probably sitting here and wondering, what does the Houthis have to do with the United States? If you are unaware, Central Command, Joe Biden, essentially the area of the U.S. military who's in charge of the Middle East, Joe Biden said, we are going to defend any strikes from the Houthis as Israel does what they do, because the U.S. has signed up for this and said, you are our ally, you can focus on what you need to focus on, and we will focus on regional stability and the defense of Israel and our allies. This also includes the British, I think the French are involved, the German, and other allies as well. So again, this is why this topic is so relevant, because again, Joe Biden undesignated them, redesignated them. The Houthis had a whole build-up time, and now we are on the offensive. We have been on the offensive before with Joe Biden. I think one time we did like 60 strikes in one night, but now we have continuous strikes. We have a policy put in place to bring the fight to Yemen on the Houthis. No more are we doing defensive strikes. We are now on the offensive, and this seems to be the big difference between the Trump administration and the Biden administration.
Pushback to calls for firings that I've heard from the White House and from Republicans is, well, when the Afghanistan pullout happened, and obviously service members lost their lives during the pullout from that airport, they said no one in the Biden administration was fired, not the National Security Advisor, not the Defense Secretary. What would you say to that?
What I would say is that all these cases need to be looked at. We need to hold people accountable for their failures in leadership, no matter what administration is. This is an intentional failure of treating confidential information like...
What did you make of the VA?
Now, one of the other really big talking points as far as this entire situation, and I really do think Democrats miscalculated that this would happen, is the immediate slap on the wrist and the immediate accountability as far as Pete Hegseth and Mike Waltz owning up to the situation, especially Mike Waltz. Republicans were like, hey, we messed up, let's move on. And this is why the story, I think, is really like calming down. Nobody really even seems to care because, again, the mission was a success, and Scott Jennings really brings this up.
How is this defensible in the slight? I don't understand.
Well, I think two things can be true, and it shouldn't be that hard to just say out loud. Communications about this were not well handled. It was a mistake. Mistakes lead to teachable moments, and the president's had hard conversations with the people who were involved in it, and he's quite certain that they've learned from this mistake. I mean, he said that in so many words.
Does it make sense to you that the president would be angry about this?
Of course, because it's detracting from the other thing that's true, which was this was a righteous hit. The president made a good decision, reversing a bad policy from his predecessor. We hit the bad guys. We did what we were supposed to do. The United States military once again proved it is the most ruthlessly lethal, efficient fighting force on planet Earth, and we are making shipping safe again. So the military, our fighting men and women, and the bureaucracy that supports them did its job here, and we've been on the air for 12 minutes and 33 seconds, and I'm the first person to say the mission was a success. But we spent all our time talking about the part that wasn't well handled, and it should not and will not happen again.
All right, so thank you if you guys are still here and you're still watching the video. I really appreciate it, and I hope you understand when I talk about those service members who lost their lives or that situation, I talk about them with the highest of honors. The highest of honors. I mean, what they did was the ultimate sacrifice for this country and for the thousands upon thousands of people who were able to evacuate Afghanistan. A lot of them owe their lives to those service members who lost their lives. Anyway, thank you guys so much for being here. God bless, and we'll see you guys later. Thank you.